Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Run the Alps Rendezvous. I'm Hilary Girardi, and it's been a little while since our last edition of a Run the Alps Rendezvous. Those of you who've tuned in before already know who I am. I'm a longtime friend of Run the Alps and a professional endurance athlete here in the Chamonix Valley, or actually in Servoz, which is maybe even better than Chamonix if I'm
I would agree with
not
you
mistaken. Right. In the summertime, I specialize in technical mountain running races. In the winter, I usually swap out the running shoes for skis. So basically, the format of a rendezvous is pretty simple. We invite people to come and talk to us, folks from the trail running community. It's an informal chat, no wrong answers to questions. And we're joining you here in Les Pèlerins in Chamonix, and also from Ogden, Utah. So today is going to be a little bit different than some of our rendezvous. It's a little bit more of a nuts and bolts kind of episode, and we're keeping it all in the family with my two guests today actually work for Run the Alps. So here on my right is Emily Geldard, and she's been working with Run the Alps for 6 years. She's an international mountain leader and is our company's head guide and assistant manager. And she's also a mountain jack of all trades, not just a runner, but also a skier and a cyclist. And I recently learned a horse rider. And she also makes sure that we maintain a good relationship with our favorite local brewery, Big Mountain Brewery. It's really important for us.
We have some links there.
Yeah. And then we are being virtually joined today by Steph Lefferts in Ogden, Utah, just north of Salt Lake. And she lived before in Annecy, France for 3 years, which is when she really started running all around the Alps, and also when she started working as the Run the Alps tour manager. She's a certified personal trainer and a relatively recent dog mom. And one of the things I think that we've all come to know about Steph is that we can pretty much always count on her. She goes pretty far above and beyond to make sure everyone has everything they need. Mm-hmm. And in the case of today we're recording at about 6:30 in the morning, Ogden local time. So she does not have a coffee. I've learned she has ice water to wake her up. But so thank you two for joining us. Really quickly to run over the format of this particular rendezvous. What are we going to be talking about today? This is an episode that will hopefully be useful for people for a while, because we're going to try to equip you guys, the audience, with all of the information that you would need to pick the right Run the Alps trip for you. It's also a pretty good refresher for me because I've been a good friend of Run the Alps for a long time, but the company is growing and there are more and more exciting things going on. And it'll be good for me to get familiar with all of them. So we'll start out sort of with an overview, and then we're going to go through sort of a rundown of a lot of the questions that Emily and Steph get a lot of the times from guests in advance of a trip. And you might even find that the question you have is getting answered today. And then we're going to do a real rapid fire where I've prepared some secret fun questions that I'm going to ask these two so you can get to know them a little bit better. And we're going to try to do it all in about a half hour. So great. So now that I've talked a lot, I'm going to be giving the floor over to Emily and Steph. So the first question though is kind of like, can you give me an overview? What are the different kinds of trips that Run the Alps offers? Seen there's guided trips, self-guided trips. What does that mean? What's on offer?
Yeah, sure. So our guided trips would be probably the conventional tour that you might imagine if you're going running in the Alps, where you have a guide who's a qualified international mountain leader like myself or one of the many other mountain leaders we have. And then with a group of normally up to about 7 other guests on that holiday, the guide will show you around the areas, but also look after you in terms of telling you where to go in the evenings, best place around the towns. And of course, they're fully qualified in case there's an accident or, anything that requires looking after you, making sure you have the best time. And I think it's just good because people can just not worry about anything. On the other hand, if you're quite keen to do a bit of navigation, or maybe you've got your own particular group you want to go away with already, then the self-guided option could be the right choice. That is everything in the guided holiday apart from the guide. So you still get all the bookings, the baggage transfer, and a set of self-guided notes and the GPS of the course. You just don't have a guide with you for the whole trip.
That's interesting what you said, because actually I hadn't really thought about that, like baggage transfer and stuff like that. Probably it would be. I typically don't run with everything I need for a night out. So.
It's quite nice to get to your hotel and your bags are already there, and you can just have a shower and change into nice clothes. And also it means if you can go at your own pace. If you're self-guided, you maybe want to go with just a partner or a friend. It's a really good system we have out here with the baggage transfer. Yeah.
Oh, very
so
cool.
And that's available. Yeah, just to reiterate, on the self-guided and the guided trips. Yeah.
Very cool. And then, so like you talked a little bit more about the guided trips, but I'm hoping that maybe Steph can jump in here with, among all of the different guided trips that Run the Alps offers, what are the variations? Like, are there different kinds of trips, or is it like one size fits all?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say we have a lot of variety with our guided tours. We do guided tours in France, Italy, and Switzerland, and some of them are village-based, meaning we stay in one town for multiple nights. Some are point to point, so you're constantly moving. Some are village-based with a special night up in a high mountain hut. So we definitely have a lot of variety among those trips. And then within that too, we also have ranked the tours by level of difficulty. It's a scale of 1 to 4, and basically that just means what you should be prepared for in terms of how far you should be able to run, what kind of vertical you might get in that day. And then some of our guided trips also have an option to race. So that often happens at the end of the tour. So we, hopefully get you there without your legs being too tired, but you get to you get to end with a really fun event in the Alps. And those are pretty awesome trips. And then we've also started doing a lot of tours with special guests. So some pro athletes have come on trips. We're doing a few special tours this summer that are about to be announced.
I get the anticipation is killing me.
With those, the one thing that we want to make sure everyone understands is when an athlete joins a trip, they're there the entire time. So they're joining you for the meals, the runs, the activities. They're not just popping in for a dinner one night. That does happen sometimes, but when we bring an athlete on,
I'm familiar with that format. Yeah. I've gotten the chance
to. Hillary's often one of our guests.
And also, the athlete does slow down a little bit for those tours as well, right? So you don't have to keep up with the pros.
No, it's race pace.
And then we also often have 2 guides on the tours when they're full, so that we can help manage people's varying speeds.
I have a question, because you said that there are trips in Switzerland, Italy, and France. So I'm lucky, right? I've lived in France for 12 years. I speak French. I do not speak Italian or German. On a guided trip, does that help make it more fluid? If I wanted to do a self-guided trip, do I need to speak those languages?
I'd say absolutely fine if you don't speak those languages.
Okay,
or
no
the
language
the hotels we use and the restaurants we recommend are ones run by people who will speak at least enough English to serve you a meal and welcome you to the hotel. So language shouldn't be an issue at all. No.
Okay. It's reassuring. I mean, I can say pasta and cafe, cappuccino, but
all the essential food groups,
exactly. Yeah. Well, awesome. So, Emily, you're one of the guides.
Yeah.
Who are the other guides?
Yeah.
Who guides these trips?
We have many different guides now, all of whom have what's known in English as the International Mountain Leader Award, or in French as the accompagnateur en moyenne montagne. So it's the legal requirement to guide groups of people in the mountains here.
So if I just stop you there, Steph, it's been a while since I lived in the US. We don't have that in the US, right?
No, that's not a regulated industry, you could say.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So very different in Europe, where everything is regulated, and if you're working, you do have to have the appropriate qualification. But the good thing is, it's actually a really useful qualification to have, in terms of normally about 3 years of training, which includes everything from navigation to security on steep ground, so looking after people where it's steep and rocky. Not that our running tours go into that sort of territory very much. And also a lot about nature, geology, and the flora and fauna of the area. So part of our job as your guide is not just showing you where to run, but pointing out lots of things along the ways, from the mountains to ideas about the local culture, to the different animals we see, whether it's vultures, ibex, or little stoats. It could be anything like that along the way. We have to learn all the different, we enjoy learning also all the different flowers and trees, everything about the natural environment. So it's a very worthwhile qualification to have, and as I say, all our guides have that. We have a lot of British guides, but also some Swiss and some French, and we basically hire people who, as well as having the crucial qualification, are really fun people who we would like to hang out with for.
That sounds like then if you do a guided trip, you're in pretty good hands.
Yeah.
And maybe the guides also help design the trips, the self-guided ones?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the knowledge the guides have built up, we are in discussions with new tours and advice for self-guided trips. Absolutely, because we obviously know how people feel on runs, and we have some good ideas about which areas would be popular. If we're there with the group as well, obviously we can offer lots of tips on trail running as well. I think it's fair to say all of our guides have done several races in the Alps and are keen trail runners as well. Lots of them having come from road running backgrounds, like many people have, but they're keen trail runners in their personal life also.
I think that one of the questions that you guys probably get a lot, especially before the trips, is like, how hard is it? I think people get kind of anxious about getting left behind. And Steph touched on that a little bit in terms of like this rating system. Maybe you could get into that a little bit more?
Sure, yeah, and I really do appreciate that a lot of people get quite worried about that before the trip starts. Normally, as soon as we get running, it all settles out, of course, and people can relax. But I think people do worry about it. So what I'd say is, first of all, as Steph mentioned, we have the rating system 1 to 4. So our grade 1 level trips, about 900 meters or 3,000 feet maximum of climbing a day, and maybe about 10 to 15 kilometers in distance. Another feature is that they wouldn't be that technical as well. There tend to be smoother trails. Whereas if we go all the way up to the level 4 trips, such as our Via Valais or the Express Tour de Mont Blanc, which is the Tour de Mont Blanc in 4 days, you're looking, pretty fast. You're looking at up to 3,000 meters perhaps of vertical up and down, and sometimes around 15-20 miles a day. So those give you a good indication. Also, what I want people to know is that it's always possible to either shorten the route or take it slower. Like Steph mentioned earlier, we often have a second guide, so we've got the possibility to have part of the group do a shortcut, or part of the group be a bit slower. There's lots of options here. The Alps have amazing trains and teleferiques, the gondolas and trams here, so we use those sometimes to cut out the uphill or cut out the downhill, if that helps people as well. So I've never had the experience really where someone came along and then really couldn't do the tour because they weren't fit enough. As long as you have a look at the grading system, and then you could always talk to someone before your tour, you can check that you're as prepared as you can be and get the most out of the tour. I think also maybe Steph, you might want to talk about the training program we have as well.
Yeah, one of my questions, which is a lot of people, how hard is it and how much should I have been running before I go on one of the trips?
One thing to add to what you were saying, Emily, the distances that you cover in the day too, those are spread out over the whole day. So it's not like you have to be able to, run like 15 miles in a couple hours. Like we take it casually. You're going to stop at huts, you'll get a cafe au lait, you'll have lunch, take photos. Like it's your day. So if you can just be on your feet for some time and whatnot, you can usually get the distance done.
Yeah, I actually wanted to add to that though. This is not to not say, or this is not intended to mean that people should be scared or anything like that. But I would say that when I came from the US, I was used to measuring things in distance a lot of the time, and didn't know about how important vertical gain is here. Yeah. And so if I could say, relatively easily run 20 miles, but where I'm from is relatively flat, you might be a little bit surprised about how long 20 miles might take. Yeah. And so I think maybe that's a good way to start thinking about that PPP program as well. Definitely. Is that there is like a little bit of particularity about the terrain here.
I think often when people do a run around here, they don't really think about how far they've run in kilometers. It's how much climbing they did, how much run they did. Like, I just went out and did 2,000 meters rather than I just went out and did 20 kilometers. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah. But so for folks maybe who are thinking about like, ooh, how do I prepare myself for that? If you could talk a little bit about the program.
Yeah, so last year we launched the personalized prep program, and what that is an opportunity to work with a coach, and they're going to get some background information about you and your running history and what trip you're going on, and if it's the right fit, they're going to put together a personalized training program for you. And what's really, I think, really great about the coaches we work with is not only are they phenomenal coaches and people, but they live in the Alps. So they live where you're going to be going. They know that terrain, they run on those trails. And so they really understand what you're coming for. One of the coaches is actually a guide as well. So he might even be out there on the trip with you.
So speaking of those guides, who are they?
Our coaches right now are Sam Hill, who's one of our guides, and Meg Mackenzie, who's a professional trail running athlete herself.
Yeah, Meg also has a trail running coaching business, I think, in South Africa, and
where she's from.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So another question that I think you guys sometimes get actually about the difficulty is, what about the altitude or the elevation? If I come from sea level, am I going to have a hard time on this? What would you say about that?
I think typically we're not going high enough for people to have a hard time. It hasn't really come up. The very highest we'd go on our runs is normally about 2,500 meters, so about 7,500 feet. And that's just the high point for the day. So we're not normally running at more than 6,000 feet. So at that elevation, some people may feel it a tiny bit, but I haven't really noticed that in any of my guests over a lot of years. You might notice it if you take the tram up to the Aiguille du Midi, which is like the 12,000 feet. But apart from that, we're not going to be running up there.
You don't do like little, interval tests?
No, typically not.
Great. Well, so then another question, right? You were talking about different groups, and obviously, some people maybe live at low, like sea level. Some people live up high. Who are the people who come on Run the Alps trips? What kind of people? What's the group made up of? Maybe Steph, a little bit of the backgrounds of some of the people.
Sorry for all the back and forth. My puppy's going crazy.
We might have to see that puppy at some point during this.
We'll bring him on. Yeah, so our groups are kind of from all over the world. About 80% of our guests come from the US. And I would say ages range anywhere from in their 20s to even a few in their 70s. The majority are probably 50s. Emily, correct me if I'm wrong there.
On any one trip, we'll often have some in their late 20s, like throughout the range. But yeah, I'd say that most people somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. We get a lot of solo travelers. And with that, it's nice because you can opt to share a room with another solo traveler. So, you know, you might be coming by yourself, but if you come on a guided tour, you know, you'll be with a group, which is always nice.
And everyone's always, I have found everyone's like united by their love of trail running as well. So even before you meet, you've got something in common with everyone on the trip, which is really nice.
Where else do people come from, though?
I
You
guess
said like
we've had,
80%.
yeah, the other 20%, we've had Australians, Canadians. I mean, that trip, it was Meg Mackenzie's women's trail camp tour in 2022. We had someone from each continent of the world, apart from Antarctica. But yeah, we had
Not a lot of people living here,
no, that was really cool. So yeah, we do have quite a few also Europeans, Australians, South Americans. So yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned her trip though, because so if I'm not mistaken, Meg will be doing that trip again this year. And are there many like, you know, single gender trips? Like if you've got like a women's only trip and why?
This is the only all women's trip right now that we're offering. We find that it's kind of a special opportunity for women to get together in a space like that. And one thing we didn't mention about Meg, but she's also a life coach. And so she's just this really amazing person to be around and learn from. And so with her trip, it's not just running. You know, you also get an opportunity to talk about, you know, challenges for women in sport and, you know, these other areas where maybe you don't feel like you have a lot of support yourself. And so hers is just a really special tour in that way.
Yeah, that's great to know.
Yeah, and it's great. I'll be leading that tour again next year, and there's definitely demand for it. There's a lot of women who really like the idea of going on a trail running holiday with other women. Yeah.
So we do have people coming from all over the world. Cannot not name the elephant in the room though. Like, what about traveling in the times of COVID? Is it safe to go on a Run the Alps trip?
COVID's obviously been a topic for quite a few years now. We've spent a lot of time developing our policy around how to try to manage COVID, both on a trip as well as just with registration and signing up for a trip. And so, you know, we spend a lot of time outside. We try to, you know, take steps to mitigate spreading any sickness amongst the group. I think we've been really fortunate with that and have done a really good job. And in terms of if you want to sign up for a trip, but you're afraid that things might close down again, we've taken all that into consideration with our terms and conditions. So we've tried to make it pretty easy for you to, you know, move your trip forward a year, stuff like that. So it's definitely still on our minds, and it's something we talk to all of our guides about before every trip and whatnot. But yeah, for the most part, you know, everyone seems to arrive healthy and stay healthy. And
but could you please tell us what the virus is going to do next?
Yeah. We'll add that bit to our tongues.
What strain are we on?
Yeah, I think it's what, I mean, you say we've been pretty lucky, but it's also I'd like to think a consequence of us having a good system in place last summer and you know, acting quickly and being consistent with our practices as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
Looking good.
So obviously, though, we don't have the trips don't function in a bubble where we're not going other places. And in fact, as Steph mentioned, sometimes we very purposefully go somewhere where there are a lot of people, like a race.
Yeah,
I obviously personally have a bit of experience racing in the Alps, but I'd love to know what the experience is like for a guest who wants to sign up for a race.
So this is a really popular option actually, and I guess it makes sense because the Alps has had trail running races since the 60s basically. It's such a part of the culture here, and if you do any race here, you're going to end up with supporters lining not just the start line and the finish, but there's randomly in an alpine field some kids there with bells, so it's a really fun experience first and foremost. Normally what happens is that the trail race will come at the end of the Run the Alps tour. So you have a bit of running around the region to get used to the area. Your guide, if you're on a guided trip, will help you with any of the collecting the bib, getting to the start line on time, all that sort of stuff, and also supporting you in the race if you need a bit of crewing as well, which can be handy, part of the deal. So you kind of get it as part of your package, and it's possible to do that as a self-guided option as well. Run the Alps will help organise your entry into the trail race as well, and also help out with those things that you maybe are not so sure about, like the fact you have to get a medical certificate before you enter a trail race in the Alps. So,
I remember that being pretty confusing.
Yeah, so Run the Alps is there to organise and also, support you and congratulate you at the end of the trail race as well. And there's quite a few to choose from because Run the Alps has got a good relationship with several races, from the Chamonix Mont Blanc Marathon through to Matterhorn Ultrax or the Eiger Ultra. So
at this point, I've wrapped up all the questions that I think I want to ask you guys, but I want to also just open up the floor. Is there anything else that you feel like people might need to know to help them pick a trip? Have we skipped anything important?
One thing that comes to mind is dietary. We've got a lot of people who are vegetarian or vegan or gluten-free, and sometimes traveling abroad can be pretty intimidating with trying to figure out how to manage dietary. So one thing is, in a lot of the big towns like Chamonix and Courmayeur, a lot of the restaurants there have started to cater to more of those diets. And so you can usually find a lot of good choices. And then with some of the smaller inns and huts and hotels, we notify them of those dietary needs ahead of time, and do our best to try to make sure that there's a complete meal for you there.
That's a good point. I recently have found out that I may have a gluten intolerance, and I'm currently looking at this plate of croissants, and
I'll have to eat all of them.
And yes, if you also have gluten issues, you may not get to eat them, but I don't go hungry, as it turns out. Yeah.
I guess one other thing we could add is that Run the Alps can lend poles or running vests or bits and bobs that perhaps if you're new to trail running you don't have, and you're not sure if you want to buy them even before you've tried them out. So if you are getting into trail running, then we can help out with gear as well.
That's true, that I have seen that. There's a nice Run the Alps gear selection.
Yeah.
It feels like going shopping.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, if you two don't have anything else to add, I have some lightning round questions for you. Some of which I will require both of you to answer, and some of them, you can do only one. So the first one is, for Emily, where is your favorite place to take guests on their first day of a trip to Chamonix?
The Grand Balcon Sud, high above Chamonix Valley.
Steph, when you next come back to France, croissant or pain au chocolat?
Croissant.
All right. For either of you, most surprising question you've ever gotten from a potential guest?
Share that on the chat that we have on the website, that somebody asked about a helicopter rescue. before.
Oh, like they anticipated getting injured?
No, they were in a situation where they needed a helicopter rescue. So first port of call was the Run the Alps chat. Hi, any ideas on how I can get a helicopter rescue?
That is definitely the weirdest.
We gave them some answers. Hopefully it all worked out.
Did you say call 112?
Yeah.
112 is the international European rescue.
Yeah.
All right. Both of you, favorite board game for a rainy day?
Scrabble.
Settlers of Catan.
Ooh, good.
Okay, I've got to learn about that one when I next see you, Steph.
True or false, you have both won the Golden Shoe Award.
It's true. As exemplary Run the Alps employees, yes.
Yeah. All right, Steph, this one's for you. Wire-haired Dachshund or Labradoodle?
Aw, Dachshund.
We'll get a chance to see Welly.
Yeah, I've got to see him after that.
And then, also, Doug isn't here with us today, so we're allowed to say whatever we want.
Yeah, I mean,
little guy
is
and then,
one
also,
of the
Doug
cutest
isn't.
dogs ever.
He's very cute. Well then, Welly can answer the next one: running belt or pack.
Ooh, pack.
You can actually get the little packs for dogs, Do
you take dogs on trips?
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. Some of the guides have dogs, which they check if the guests are happy for them to come along. We also have a tour called Trails and Tales, which is focused on running with dogs or visits to dogs as well. So yeah, we've got the dogs covered pretty well.
Dog lovers, Trails and Tales is the one you want. All right, last one: poles or no poles?
Poles.
Poles. Definitely poles.
Easy.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's just about it. So for the audience, I hope that we answered all of your questions that you might have. If we did not, they just mentioned the chat. The chat is not the place to write to if you are in need of a helicopter rescue right now. However, if you have questions that are a little less urgent, it's not a chat bot on the site. It's actually a chat with true people. However, sometimes, Steph, are you one of those people?
Yeah.
Sometimes even Steph is not there. She does sleep some. So could be meetings, could be time changes. You can also write an email on the form on the website, and someone will reply to you in pretty short order.
Yeah. Do get in touch.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for giving us all of that great information about trips. And thanks so much to Alexandra Yanyek, who is taking care of the video today, all of the IT stuff. And as always, a shout out to Doug, who is the founder and our fearless leader, and who's probably home now working on a book. Or maybe
I'm pretty sure he won't be sleeping, whatever he's doing.
Or is it an article? Or could he be doing a film? Or maybe a graphic novel? Trying to design a shoe, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
All of the above.
All of the above at once, yeah. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in, and happy trails.